I'm happier than Jeff Bezos. I've always been the king of silver linings.
I don't think Jeff feels emotions like we feel them. I think it's
I think you're right.
I don't think he's from this planet. I don't think Elon is either.
If there are elves and lasers, they are in those rocket ships that both Bezos and Musk sent out into space, though.
Are those rocket ships manned with elves with lasers?
Yeah.
Is that the plan?
Yes, they are, Greg.
Where do you think Santa's elves went? Why do you think there was that controversy about the North Pole?
Yeah, I didn't get a present last year. I think they're not there anymore.
Welcome to another episode of Law Offices of Quibble, Squabble Bicker on this August 24th, 2022. Where we have a brand new client for today. Our client is Elves with Lasers.
Behold, trapped in a hellscape of their own invention, socially unaware old white men bound by the pretense of being fake lawyers yet knowing no law, no exquisite Latin terminology, they are inexplicably compelled to quibble over minutia, squabble over triflings, and bicker like those who value their backyards far too highly without even knowing the difference between an easement and an alleyway. At this very moment, you have entered the heart of the Law Offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker. Let's get started.
Do you suffer from bouts of melancholy? Do you emit strong bodily odors of an unpleasant nature? Do you sometimes fear the people around you, even close friends and family? Do you frequently have bathroom accidents wherein you fail to reach a toilet in time and soil yourself? Do you suffer from impotence? Do you find yourself questioning the government? Do you harbor secret sexual fantasies involving small woodland creatures? Do you sometimes entertain thoughts of committing violent acts against your coworkers? Do strange malodorous fluids leak out of your genitalia? Do you wonder if you'll ever be happy? Well, we don't sell a product that can help you with any of these problems. We're just glad we're not you.
Well, what the hell's the sponsor, Greg?
Oh, some assholes who paid for ad time just to be mean to people.
What? Wait a second. That's not an
They
actual...
paid good money.
Who
Not
did?
money.
Who did it?
I
What's
don't
the
know,
name of the organization?
Some assholes who were just like...
That's the name of their group, Some Assholes?
No,
assholes.
they have no name. There's a bunch
Please
of
go
assholes.
I want you to redo this with like some name of a group at least so I can work with this afterwards.
Some
You
assholes.
lazy bastard.
That's the point. It's a tricking you into thinking it's some product. Like all those commercials that say, like, do you suffer from blah, blah, blah?
Yeah.
But these guys have no product. They just wanted to basically say...
What guys, though? We don't know that it's guys
I don't
until
know,
at the
some
very end when you say that. It's
some
just
assholes.
we. Who is the unnamed we?
A
So you're
bunch of
saying is that
people-
I have to get... So I'm going to have to be the creative one on this and figure out the name of this organization
Why
to
do
turn
we
it
have
into
to
the
do that? Do
sponsor.
you do that every episode?
It's the Some Asshole Foundation.
Yeah.
I think that's
How
the other.
about-
That's the other name of our
Bunch of
podcast.
assholes.
How about the Church of Some Other Assholes?
Yes.
Because it has sort of that churchy kind of vibe at the end.
All right, I'll do some kind of like little voiceover at the end of it and add that to it. I'll
But
delete
why-
most of the stuff we just been talking about with me arguing
Why
with
do you
Greg.
need a sponsor name?
Because it's an ad,
Something-
Greg. It's
I
Right.
know. This was an ad. These guys paid money, non-money.
I see that, I see that all the time where, the announcer just reads some bullshit and goes, I don't know, some asshole gave me money to do that.
Yeah, it happens.
No, it doesn't happen, Greg. It never happens. That never
Do you
happens.
know that in Seattle, in the 70s, when everyone was leaving Seattle, someone paid for the billboard leaving town to say, hey, the last person to leave Seattle, please turn the lights up. Just to be like almost like performance art.
Right, that's a billboard.
Yeah, I know, that's advertising.
So what you're saying is right now you're doing performance art, is what you're saying.
No, well, these people, some assholes were.
These people, these unknown
Some
people
assholes.
who
Yeah, these
paid
assholes.
you, who didn't pay you.
Who didn't
whatever.
pay me, but theoretically, they would have paid me just to do this shitty thing.
I mean, it's a novel
so
idea,
bad.
Greg, but it really doesn't work. I mean, I get your concept that like some random guys who wouldn't want anybody to like know. So you're saying you're like the Banksy of fake
The
sponsors.
5 people that watch
Yes.
this show.
This is Banksy doing the fake sponsors. What you're saying?
Thanks
It's
for
like,
putting
no
me
one
in that rarefied
will
company.
never.
Thanks for not saying you're a fucking moron who made the shittiest sponsor we've ever had.
It wasn't that it was bad. It's just there wasn't a sponsor. It was just it was just you asking a whole bunch of questions.
That was part of the joke. It was like there is no company. It was just someone paid for this ad just to be like, "Hey, sucks to be you." We can't help you.
Today's episode of the Law Offices of Quibble, Squabble Bicker is brought to you by laziness. Is what has been brought by.
The letter
It was
L.
hard thinking of that stuff. I could have easily come up with some bullshit name. That would be hard.
You could have easily done it, and yet
it gone against the joke.
Did not.
The joke was that the part of the humor, was that it wasn't a company. It was just some guys who were like, ha ha.
But see, that was the least funny part of it. The joke really was over when you said, "We don't make a product for this. It sucks to be you." That was the joke. The other thing was just the kind of the wrap up to make it like an ad.
Yeah, you could have had a really good punchline by having a really silly name for the sponsor there, Greg. That would have made it funnier.
Like
you had picked a good one, as opposed to just leaving it hanging where you're going, okay, so what the hell just happened?
You know, the church we don't give a shit, or
I think you've been in Portland too long, Greg. You're thinking way too ironically, is what's happened here. That was your downfall, is that you went way too ironic.
I like to keep Portland weird. I've often said this.
But you didn't go weird, Greg. You just went blah. You just kind of like left everybody hanging, and it didn't really... It's kind of like tantric sex, Greg. What you basically did was you gave no climax to that particular sponsor.
People like tantric sex, Matt.
What?
That's a different... Now we're getting into a totally different subject.
I just don't know how this turned into like a fucking creative writing class for my college years. Critique. I don't think any sponsor's ever been critiqued this harshly.
That's because every sponsor has had a name before that I could work with, that I could create a graphic for. This one, I'm like, I can't do anything with this.
You know, you could show all the people, like the guy who shits his pants, who doesn't make it to the toilet in time. You could show all the problems that I list. Do you have this? Suffer from this?
You know, having an agency and working and doing creative meetings. This is right up there in terms of.
He knows. He has to deal with morons all the time. We're like, I want this.
No, I mean where the client starts telling the creatives like, "Oh, you know what else you could do? This is what I was thinking," and you're like, yeah. You know,
my daughter wants to be an actress, and she could be a commercial.
I'll never forget this when I was sitting there and I lost it, and my partner punched me in the arm so hard. The guy goes, and then at the end, I want the two like champagne glasses. They come together, they clink, and then you make some little starburst thing. Can you do that? And I just started laughing. My partner's like, "Shut up!" Like, okay. So yeah, no. Tell us more about what your great idea is, Craig.
He should just do it himself. Why hire you guys if he's got all these brilliant ideas?
I know. That's why this episode is sponsored by laziness.
No, it had nothing. I purposely didn't give it a name. That was part of my shtick. Maybe wrong-headed.
So it was.
Let's just call it the Church of We Don't Give a Fuck About You. The Church of
so
We
like the pulling your ear thing was just a mystery we all were going to just left with when you die and go, what did he mean by that? I don't know.
You know what? I think at this stage we've like beaten this to death so long that I'm not going to do anything with it now. I'm just going to let it sit.
It outlasted it.
It's become its own client, basically.
Yeah.
This is an important client. We can talk a lot about the creative process. Holy Moses.
Fine, I'm never doing a sponsor again. Fine.
No, I want you to do a sponsor. You know why I did what I did? I'm such a bad person. I did it just to see if I could get to the reaction because I didn't say anything. And then I thought, you know what Greg will do? Greg will prove me and mostly Matt wrong, and he'll actually come up with something. And you did. I had something because I was like, he probably won't, but maybe he will. It'd be cool if he did, and you did. And so I was proud of you at that moment. So I'm not critiquing. I'm just poking fun at you because mostly because this thing started it. But no, it's good. I have one for next week, and I want you to do more, and I want you to be avant-garde. We need our Andy Kaufman. You know, we need our performance art guy.
And just like him, I wash dishes. That's performance art.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be washing dishes, but, I do it because it's ironic.
It is.
You
It is
wash
very-
dishes
at
for
a-
the
at a-
irony, not for the paycheck.
At a
Yes.
place called Fried Eggs, I'm in Love. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like the inception of irony, actually. That a former punk rocker washes dishes at a place named after,
A Cure
ironically, a
song.
Cure song.
Yeah.
That's like
Yes.
the most popular place on Mississippi Avenue on Sundays.
That has an egg sandwich called huevo mutilation.
Is it good?
Yeah, our sandwiches are really good.
I almost ate there, but the line for it went out of the food court kind of truck area and down the street, and I'm like, I'm not waiting that long.
The restaurant's not nearly that bad, though they do have like 30-minute waits, which I don't get. If I went to a restaurant and they're like 30 minutes, I'd be like, see ya. I'm going to another restaurant.
It's because it's trendy, Greg. And plus, your restaurant has been talked about on Top Chef before.
Yeah.
So,
Guy
that's-
Fieri,
Oh,
the card, I think.
not Guy Fieri.
No, he went. I think we were on Guy Fieri once.
No, Top Chef is a little more high-end than Guy Fieri.
We were on like a real fancy chef show.
Yeah,
I
it's
know.
like one where like legitimate James Beard nominated chefs go on and compete against each other. And one of the guys, they did an episode in Portland, and one of the chefs on that show mentioned the breakfast scene in Portland, and the first name that came out of his mouth was Fried Egg I'm in Love, as one that's heralding the breakfast scene in Portland. So
that's the
for
importance.
for
of
whatever
a
that's worth, that could be an additional reason why there's big lines behind it. It's like big
Do you know
lines of
someone-
Voodoo Donuts, you know. I mean, like maybe it's worth it,
Right,
maybe it's not.
right.
Do you
I
know
was
some
just-
restaurateur just recently in the past year opened a breakfast sandwich place downtown, which has punny music-based names for all the sandwiches. And he's just like, in interviews, he's like, "Oh, I never heard of Fried Egg I'm in Love. I just thought it was a fun idea." And it's just like, "Fuck you."
So he took the sandwich name for himself.
Not the exact names, but he has a place that all the sandwiches have punny musical names, and
Oh,
just like that's our shtick. You know, that's like stealing the secret sauce from McDonald's.
No, it'd be like stealing the name for McDonald's.
yeah,
Well, they
but he's
just
not
started-
saying what he's saying is they're not using that name, but they might do. I'm trying to think of a song. The name, you know, like
Yeah,
Let
what song?
Let It Seed, which is their seed and grains salad. It's a
Let It
horrible
Seed.
idea. No one should eat that, but they probably would eat it if anywhere
Yeah.
in this city. Someone would eat it.
If anyone's going to eat that sandwich, it'll be done in Portland, Oregon.
But
Right.
his
So he's
puns aren't
saying,
nearly as good.
he's saying all the names of the dishes have those kind of musical jokes to them.
Yeah. Not like
Right.
that's
Yeah, the
never
last-
been done before anywhere.
The last cocktail we had was called the Engelbert Cucumber Drink.
My
That's
God.
cute.
And every time I passed the sign, I laughed. Every time I'd go to get the bus to Muncie, I laughed.
Somebody tried
love
really hard
puns.
for that one.
Now we have a one called Pineapples and Strawberry-O.
That really should have been done with an Italian accent, Greg.
Which
I
one?
didn't get to. I didn't
The one
get
you
the
just did,
joke.
because you said, we have a one. So you
we
should've-
have a pineapples and strawberry-O.
I don't even understand the name of that. Is that based off of a
You know
song?
the Apples in Stereo? It's a band. They're
No,
like an
never,
indie band.
never. Oh, this is like even more
Ooh.
obscure
Yeah.
Portland crap. Okay,
It's a
got
lot
it.
of hipsters, yeah. Most of them are.
You don't get the joke because you don't get the joke. but
I'm
it's a
too
joke.
bougie to get that joke.
Yeah, you are.
I
You can't be
understand.
my roommate in my house that my dad pays for. And it's,
Your dad pays for your house, Greg?
I was taking on a persona.
Tell him
So
needs
your
to get
dad's
a
not being very
refund.
nice to you is all I got to say.
Most inner southeast houses are owned by like trustafarians who like then make like, oh, if you're my roommate, you have to be a vegan and you have to be blah blah blah. You have to be 30 to 34, like Brendan was talking about.
Yeah.
It's
well,
like-
it's one of those. It's one of those interesting things, you know. Like, at what point does people being safe and feeling safe and being with people that they identify with and all that kind of stuff? When does that become racist?
Not
Because it's
racist, but bigoted.
okay,
Yeah,
bigoted.
it's
Let's say
it's not
bigoted.
like a
So-
race.
Yeah, no. So when does that become bigoted? When does that become almost?
Well, no, you're
hateful?
right. You have the right to housing. I mean, that was part of the Civil Rights Act. Like, you can't
Right.
refuse someone the right to a house because they're
But
black.
but if me and you and Matt had a place and we're like, there's no way we're having 25-year-old females in our place. It's not happening.
Are you sure?
I'm just saying we would be bigoted at that point. Really? Even though we know that that's probably not the best idea for their health? I don't know.
We're doing it for them.
Totally.
On behalf of their mental health, they cannot stay in our house.
I'm sure all the places he's talking about that says no one over 35 is doing it because they don't want to expose anyone over 35 to their shenanigans.
That could be true, actually. They didn't want you to be infected, Brendan.
I mean, I get if you're, a house full of females and you don't want a guy. I get that.
Yeah.
House full of guys, I don't know. I wouldn't want a girl. Yeah, maybe.
But when it's like age, though, that's ageism. That's a thing.
Right.
So
I'm just saying, at what point, if we just keep doing this, if we just keep fractaling this outrage of minorities, and then we're all a minority of one, and we all, just like everybody, we've solved nothing. On the path to solving everything, we've actually made it worse.
Well, what we've solved is like not addressing our client whatsoever. We've definitely solved that problem.
And is this nowhere more apparent than if you're an elf and you have a laser? These things just never happen. Never has been.
They are discriminated against in housing across this country.
I've seen many ads for rentals that say no elves with lasers. Do not apply.
It's hard for an elf to get a laser in the state of Oregon.
If you're an elf with a phaser, however, maybe you'll be let in. But with a laser, no.
Well, then it depends on the type of elf. If you're a wood elf, yes. If you're a tree elf, no.
Greg is a wood elf. Neutral elf.
A what?
A chaotically neutral elf.
Well, I mean, that's different. Now we're getting into character.
Now we're getting into Dungeons and Dragons. So people might think we're going to be talking about Dungeons and Dragons because of the Elves with Lasers client that we have, and we could potentially go there. But the basic concept is to get into the genres of fantasy and science fiction, and what's better? Are they better? Or are they just as good as each other? Does one taste better on a hot day? Which one is more refreshing? I don't know, but we'll get to those answers at some point during the course of this show.
Right after this commercial break.
With from the Church of Those Assholes. That is
a proud sponsor.
And I just want to
click below for merchandise.
You can get your very own anus-shaped pillow.
I just want to start with this segue. Is that fantasy, I believe, is brought to you by laziness. Because when you have fantasy, you could build up this huge plot. Oh my God, how are the heroes going to get out of it? And some wizard can just show up and be like, I got a spell. I've changed reality. I've done it, totally without even thinking. Like, you don't have to make it clever.
That doesn't make it lazy. It just makes it creative.
I mean,
it's not lazy. Right. I mean, if he's creating an entire plot,
wizards can do anything. Wizards can do anything.
But Greg is right. This is why superheroes and comic books are so dumb. It's the same thing.
No,
it's
but lazy
writing. I just make the superhero be able to fly and shoot lasers at his eyes.
Spider-Man never can fly. It's not like a writer will be like, oh, shit,
so Spider-Man, sure.
Spider-Man can fly. Whenever he gets those webbing under his arms, he turns out like a...
it was like a
gliding squirrels,
One of those sugar gliders.
But see, in fantasy, if Spider-Man wasn't more science fiction based, they could just be like, oh, a Dr. Octopus, put him in the ocean and he's drowning. Oh, all of a sudden, Spider-Man has a magic spell that he can breathe underwater. No, Spider-Man would actually be in peril. You'd actually be like, Spider-Man can die.
Unless he has one of those underwater breathing apparatuses that can stick in his mouth, which suddenly he's now able to do from Batman. Right.
But while not explicitly stated, Greg, I mean, wizards had different levels, even in Lord of the Rings.
I know, but sometimes
so a young wizard couldn't do the same spell as an old wizard. So
that's true. But they were never clearly stated. Like sometimes Gandalf, could Gandalf just blow up the sun? I mean, maybe we don't know what his spell, his sorcery powers can actually do. But science is science.
Well, you kind of get into that in the Tolkien books. They get into the powers of the different supernatural beings that happen to be in those stories. They do find out which ones are more powerful than others. They do talk about that.
What's that guy called? The evil guy with the eye in the tower? Mordor?
Sauron.
It seems like he's like the devil, like Lucifer. It seems like he's omnipotent.
But actually, he's a lesser being than his former boss.
Which is Gandalf?
No, his former boss was Morgoth or Melkor.
Oh, was this Silmarillion stuff?
Yes, it's out of the Silmarillion. But I'm not going to go full nerd Lord of the Rings here, buddy.
Why not? That's what we're here. Science fiction.
I'm listening, but yeah, I never got. For me personally, all my experience with fantasy as a interaction and as a fan was through Dungeons and Dragons. I didn't read the books. I just played the game. So it's a little different because it was structured. So I get what Greg is saying, but I don't. But anyway.
Well, the thing is that regardless of whether it's science fiction or fantasy, there's always the out for those genres to do something to save a situation that's fantastical.
Yeah, because science fiction, they could say,
what's that called again? What's the word for that exactly?
Fiction?
No. What you said, where there's something that they use that's fantastical that just solves the whole problem.
Deus Ex Machina?
Oh, ducks did what?
Ducks and machines.
Ducks have sex with machines?
God in the machine.
I believe it's Deus Ex Machina as the pronunciation of that. Which
that means like God in the machine or something? What does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know what the literal definition is, but we can always look that up. But it basically means that the author is trying to get out of something by bringing in some extra easy contrived device to fix something he couldn't get out of, you know? Let me see, I'll look
like in The Fifth Element, when it turns out that love is a powerful thing, because their love, it defeats this super strong thing. It's like, what? Really? That wouldn't happen.
Now, that could be a whole show, is just go through a bunch of the examples of some of those. You just like I was watching something, and I don't remember what it was. I'm trying to remember. And I was just like, what? No, come on. No, it's just that. Okay.
Well, all right, so Deus Ex Machina, the literal translation is God out of the machine, is a plot device whereby a seemingly unsolvable problem in a story is suddenly and abruptly resolved by an unexpected and unlikely occurrence. Its function is generally to resolve an otherwise irresolvable plot situation, to surprise the audience, to bring the tale to a happy ending, or act as a comedic device. So there's various different reasons for having that. And then it says
it is usually utilized by lazy writers.
No, it doesn't say that. The term was coined from the conventions of ancient Greek theater, where actors who were playing gods were brought onto stage using a machine. The machine could be either a crane used to lower actors from above, or a riser that brought them up through a trap door. Aeschylus introduced the idea, and it was used often to resolve the conflict and conclude the drama. The device is mostly associated with Greek tragedy, although it has appeared in the comedies back in the day. So anyway, the point being that, Greg, your statement is that fantasy uses it more than science fiction.
Because it's easy, you know, like we don't know what Gandalf could do.
That's totally the case in science fiction as well. Science fiction is one of those genres that encompasses every other genre. Like if you can have detective stories within science fiction, you can have a romance within science fiction, you can have historical within science fiction involving like time travel or what have you. You know, and so you can bend the laws of physics and science within science fiction and thumb the nose at the laws that bind our current universe in general, because it's fiction.
I mean, 100 years ago, somebody like wrote a book about like, there's a quantum mechanics involved. You'd be like, that's fantasy, like, or like, you know, alternate dimensions. Which most scientists agree now there are alternate dimensions. There probably are.
Yeah, but that doesn't make it lazy writing, though. That's where I'm disagreeing with you. You're saying that using a Deus Ex Machina is lazy writing, but it's not. It requires, I mean, there's obviously lazy writers out there who do use that, but there's plenty of legitimate, brilliant authors who use that device in a contrived way that works, and they thought it completely through to push forward their story or to end their stories in the case of the Greek tragedies.
As a kid, I read Roger Zelazny. I was a big fan of that science fiction author. And
me too. I'm a big fan of Zelazny as well.
He did a fantasy book, which I wish I could remember the name, but it actually described magic as a very science fictional process, like where when you learn magic, it's almost like you see these strands that connect the universe, and just like learning electric work, being an apprentice for an electrician, you have to learn how to manipulate these strands. So it's all very like science fictional. You know,
Right.
like the way he describes sorcery and magic. It's not like this guy could just destroy the sun.
Right.
I mean, maybe after 50 years.
Yeah, I don't know which book you're referring to, but because I know in the Chronicles of Amber that Zelazny wrote.
No, it's not that. Sorry.
Where he has these supernatural beings who all come from like a real Earth, but when they go out to the other parallel Earths and they want to get back home, they kind of have to shift objects within their environment to get them closer and closer to where they came from. I can kind of see what you're talking about there. He uses like a scientific basis for his fantasy.
Because he's a science fiction author. He's not a fantasy author, but every now and then he writes things that are fantasy-ish, but he always tries to explain them in a more lucid, interesting way than just saying, oh, then the wizard snapped his fingers and did a spell.
Right.
Which is easy. You know, you don't have to explain it, how it works.
The real question is why should it matter?
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of fantasy where they explain how magic works.
There's plenty of science fiction that's lazy from the perspective of you go,
Totally.
oh, come on, dude, that's the best you had.
But I'm saying good
like
science
nearly
fiction.
every superhero story is lazy
The
writing.
superheroes are, they're really a bunch.
But supposedly good science fiction is supposed to follow the laws of science. I mean, that's good science. Like, especially
Good
like
science
hard
fiction.
stuff, they call it. You know, nerds. They actually say
hard science fiction, which really follows those.
Like Larry
but they trap themselves within those conceits.
That's true, and it might be boring because, like,
Maybe.
Come on,
Again, it
wow.
depends upon the author. Like, there's some outstanding hard science fiction writers. There's David Brin. There's Greg Bear. They toe those lines really carefully. But at the same time, they're creating these fantastic worlds that can't really exist, even within the laws of physics.
I bet they do. Those guys seem like they know their shit. Like Larry Niven.
Well, I was thinking about Larry Niven and the Ringworld books.
Yeah, doesn't he have like I think that guy has a science degree. I think he was in engineering college.
I think all three of those guys we mentioned that were
they know they
hard science guys, but at the same time, it's fiction, so they can do whatever they want.
True, but
they don't bring in a wizard to snap their fingers, but they can bring in a robot that snaps its fingers.
I mean, the truth.
Well, then it would be hard to explain. You have to actually explain, like, wow, this.
You say it's like this special scientific device which allows them to translate molecules into any type of food that they have. Hello, Star Trek.
That's true, yeah. I bet Greg Bear, though, wouldn't be that lazy. He'd actually really explain
It's not laziness, though, Greg.
It is kind of, you got it's science.
You don't have to get into the minutia unless you really want to bore the pants off of people.
No, science fiction nerds love that shit. When I used to read science fiction books that explain shit to me in like 2 pages.
Yeah, but how deep do you want to go into the explanations, though, Greg?
Works. I'd be like, wow, this is kind of fascinating.
Do you like reading technical manuals? Is that what you're saying?
No, I suck at science. I barely don't know science. I would just trust them to be like, I trust this guy. Seems to know science.
Okay, so that's really what it comes down to.
I'm just still trying to understand why we need to put things into these boxes, and that if you like this kind of science fiction, then you like that, and if you like this kind of fantasy, you like that. You like that, you like this, and it's only judged by the person who reads it that thinks it's good or isn't good.
I think it's because I like good storytelling, and I hate when they cheat, and a story's like, what? That's the ending, And so it seems like fantasy gives you more leeway to do that. You could just be like, oh, and then this magic gem said everything right.
I don't know.
And,
I think
but a lot of times they give the story behind the magic gem as well,
sometimes,
like where the magic comes from. How did it get imbued with the magic? What was the reason behind the imbuing of the magic? It really depends upon the author.
It's still like.
Dune. Come on. Okay, so then there's this planet, and the planet has dirt, and the dirt, does magical things, and it turns people into monsters.
It does do magical things.
What?
We could go to Arrakis. We might discover Arrakis one day. Be like,
I'm just saying that you're saying, well, that's lazy, or that doesn't make any sense, or it's not based in science. I can't think of much in Dune that was based in science other than, set in the future or whatever it was. They had space.
What about the still suits? That was brilliant. The desert.
But again, I'm not saying it was bad. I liked the series. I'm just saying that if you wanted to sit and pick something apart, you could practically, as we all three know, you could pick apart anything. I'm just saying.
No, true.
Yeah, let's go straight science fiction. The movie Alien. Okay, so there is fantasy elements in that story.
A lot of people say that's a horror movie. But it happens to be science fiction.
Well, it's science. Like I said, science fiction can encompass all genres, right? So that's science fiction with a horror bent.
that
patina.
I mean,
But it's almost more horror.
other than the monster itself, that movie I feel is more science than fantasy.
Right, but
Okay.
but what I'm saying
No
though is
fan-
that there's elements in there that aren't explainable. For example, the blood within the alien that can drip through the entire
Yeah.
spaceship, and yet doesn't actually go through the entire spaceship for
Right.
whatever reason. Somehow
Well,
it actually stops
Does it go
before
through-
it
yeah, it's
punctures the
super powerful.
whole of the spaceship and kills everybody
It's-
immediately.
It's not the best acid ever made. It's pretty strong acid that can go through 5 floors.
Yeah,
But anyway.
explain it though. Why
And
does
it
it do
burned
that?
us
And
up.
why does it stop, Greg?
Because eventually acid's not corrosive. Certain acids aren't that powerful where
So,
they'll just...
it
But
just
why
so happens-
why is that acid not that corrosive?
But see, the
I don't
thing
know.
is,
That is
Right,
the acid
Greg, you
that
don't know,
villains
and that's the lazy part of that writing.
It's not lazy.
Well, see, now you're
we
disagreeing.
now know that they were telling us alien blood can go through 5 floors of a spaceship, but not 20. That's okay. That makes sense. That's
Why not?
scientific.
Why can't it go there? They didn't explain
Well,
that.
it
though.
could. It could have, but this author chose to say that their blood isn't that acidic.
Uh-huh.
It's not like it'll go through the planet's crust. No.
And
there's
what
acid
what
to limits.
about the alien's skin prevents the acid from eating through it?
Who knows? It's like I
Well,
don't know,
there's your lazy writing there too.
I don't know if that's lazy.
Sure, it doesn't explain that. They don't say
there's
why it
elements-
doesn't eat through
Maybe
the
they have
alien.
bases in their bloodstream that fight the acid from.
Yeah, but you're making that
their
up there,
body.
Greg. You're pretending to
yeah,
know what you're talking
But that's
about.
science. I'm not
No,
just
there's no
making up
science
magic
involved there
gum.
because they never explained it. It's just lazy writing.
No, they don't have to explain
I don't believe in
everything.
science myself. I believe in magic. I believe in the magic and power of love and understanding. That's
gotta
what I
say,
come
So
up
that
with.
explains it. It's actually the love of the alien prevented the acid from eating through its skin.
That's what it
That's
was.
right.
When it
The alien was
real.
actually made from love, and it was just trying to survive, and
Well,
humans
you
just
know.
happened to come across it. So it's not really. It wasn't horror from the alien's point of view, really.
No, hate put.
It was
that
more
in
like a
there,
bad
love
dream
got
for the
him out.
alien.
Oh, it was.
We were
horrible.
the villains. We didn't understand the aliens. We didn't reach out to them and try to communicate.
Yes.
We didn't say, hey, let's talk.
Yeah, we're just looking at like, oh, they're just trying to kill us, but we should have gone and hugged. We should have embraced the alien and shown true love for the alien, and would have been saved.
Do you know that that's weird? The first novel that Dark Horse put out, they actually did a novel. They did
Now
the
you're
comics.
telling people out there about something called Dark Horse, and they don't know what you're talking about, Greg.
Okay, it's a comic company, but they did novels. And the novel's amazing. It should have been the third Alien movie. It would have been way better. Where the aliens do get to Earth because there's a profit involved. You know, the military wants them because it's like, oh, this could be like the best bio mech military shit ever. But a religion starts around them because, you know, aliens burst out of your chest. So these psychos, religious people think, oh, even men can give birth. This is like this beautiful boon to humanity. These aliens are this gift from the universe. And they actually free the aliens from the test lab. Of course, very well protected because they're like, these things are dangerous, but we want to study them and weaponize them. And they break them free because they're fanatics. They're total crazy religious freaks. And 10 years later, Earth is gone. Everyone has to leave Earth. The aliens take over, obviously.
I'm just glad they were religious freaks and not just the kinds of freaks that would do that because, I don't know, they felt that the aliens were having their rights suppressed and should be free to be like anybody, you know, because those people wouldn't
Could be that.
That
They
all
could
started
be-
in Portland, actually.
Yeah, those people wouldn't be freaks. Those people would be, you know, heroes.
No, they'd
But-
be really stupid to say the
Yeah.
aliens deserve their freedom.
How do
And
you
they're the
know?
most dangerous thing in the universe.
Maybe the alien just needed a hug.
Yeah, but that was all like lies spread by the government, so they had to free the aliens because nobody else was sticking up for them.
No, there
I
was-
see what you're doing here, Brendan. I'm not taking the bait.
I'm just saying. Why do these dichotomies have to exist? That's all. You know.
Because
Why
that's
do
just
any
stupid.
dichotomies
Religious
have to
people do
exist?
Stupid stuff. Religious people
there's
are
no
known for
evil
believing.
nature of reality when you really consider it.
Religious people are known for their belief in stupid, unrealistic things that don't exist. But like, no matter how crazy,
I'm really glad that they didn't, you know, that the
Liberal
Arabs
you
didn't
are.
do all they did with math and stuff, and the scholars that existed within religious churches of the time. I'm glad they didn't exist. That just
they
set
were
us back.
smart.
But
I
they were
bet they-
religious.
I
Is that
bet they
back
were
when it didn't
religious.
matter?
I bet they were just like, this is the cushiest job I could get right now. I can sit in a monastery and do manuscripts. They probably were atheists, those guys. They were like, we're just scientist dudes. I guarantee you. I'm seriously, I'm not
He
joking.
guarantees. He has proof.
If you were in the Middle Ages, I would be a priest. That's the fucking cushiest job there was. It's like, okay,
I
I'll
wouldn't believe
pretend I
it.
believe in this shit. And
But
then
you don't
if
take
need be-
cushy jobs, Greg. So what are you talking about? That doesn't fly.
Well, I'm
you're
saying,
you're speaking. You're being a lazy writer right now, Greg.
No, I'm smart.
Knowing
enough
what
to-
we know of you, we know you would not take a cushy job.
If it was easy, and I think it was back then, you could just be like, hey, I believe in Christ and I want to go to the monastery and whatever, study the Bible. I could fake that
You
shit.
say the
I
Bibling?
know the Bible.
Did you say the
I know the-
Bibling? You said the Bibling.
Did not. I'm pretty sure. I mean, I trust you over me because I'm drunk, but I'm pretty sure I said the Bible. But I could learn the Bible if it meant not like pulling potatoes out of the ground 20 hours a day and having my Lord
I'm
and Master.
sure. You know, when you put it like that, Matt or Greg, it all makes sense. You know, that it was just this long scam of lazy people who didn't want to work. So that was why they decided
There were
to
people
pretend to be
where they had no income.
But right, but at the same time, they were also geniuses through just dumb luck, I guess. And there they are. It makes sense.
They were the ones who didn't really believe in the bullshit. They were
They
like,
didn't believe it. Yeah, they didn't believe in anything.
there's a
They were
cush
just-
job. I get to sit in a monastery and like do manuscripts, sit on my ass and like, draw manuscripts and shit.
They're just drawing
Yeah.
manuscripts.
Think
You know,
about every other job in that era, unless you were a nobleman. It was like 17 hours a day, backbreaking labor. And I'm sure
But-
some guys were like, fuck that.
But
That's-
yeah, but there wasn't some sort of, I don't know, maybe you didn't understand how it worked, but there wasn't like some place in town square where the peasants could just walk up and go, you know what? I've been pulling weeds for a while. I'm going to go be a priest. And they're like, okay. And then send him on his way because he somehow figured it out. The
No,
people that
because
were
the
in those
priests-
positions, they were in those
Usually
positions.
aristocrats got to become priests. It was almost like, okay, yeah, like this kid is like, doesn't want to take over his dad's like de Medici or something. Oh, he doesn't want to do that.
That has zero to do with the fact
And
that
they'd
the
set him
peasants,
up in. No, they couldn't, but I mean, they could try.
But I'm just
Some
saying the
peasants
peasants
did
couldn't-
become priests.
but I'm just saying, generally speaking, the peasants couldn't read. They had no education. And
Exactly.
that's why they didn't think of anything. Not because it was some job scam.
But I would have been smart enough because I
You
loved
would have
reading
been.
as a kid.
Like
No,
like
I-
as smart as you are now.
No,
You
I'm
would
a
have been the
fucking moron, but I
Spartacus.
did love
You'd
reading.
been just-
I would have like stolen books when I was 7 and been like learned to read.
Where would
'cause
you
I
have
loved-
stolen these non-existent books from, Greg? This is before
do
the
you mean
Gutenberg Bible was created.
I didn't say that. This is Middle Ages.
Oh, let's
Right.
say there was. So
I
you're,
didn't
you're
lead
stealing-
into the Renaissance. It's still
You
Where
know,
would you have stolen these books from? At 7.
I don't know. Anywhere I
You're
could.
like hanging out at. So basically, you were going to be like one of those kids who was like taken in by the priests, the altar boy, is what you're saying.
Yeah. I would, if that meant having a better life, I might have taken one for the team. Or
What
a few
team?
for the team?
What
My
team is that?
Team Greg.
Mm.
I'd have been like, well, it's a small price to pay having my anus reamed a few times, but I'll get to become a priest and not have to fucking do backbreaking labor every day, 17 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Like washing dishes.
That's not that hard. I love my job. I feel blessed.
It's not a cushy job, though, Greg. People wouldn't
It's
say,
it's
you know
not-
what? This is a job that I'll find relaxing, and I will get to kick my feet up doing is
It is
washing
kind
dishes.
of relaxing. I mean, it's very zen. I mean, I'm running around, but I'm like, I just me.
Yeah, but
working
you're
by
on your
myself.
feet like 8 hours a day, right?
But for 10 years, I was like a line cook at Burgerville. and
I'm
that
not
was-
saying that's a better job.
No,
Greg.
that was worse. Way worse.
I wouldn't call that cushy either.
It was actually stressful. It'd be like, oh shit, we have 70 orders and we gotta get these out as fast as can. I'm just like, the dishes are dirty.
So
I want-
comparatively, it's a cushier job than the last one you had. But most
if you want to
most
say,
right-thinking individuals would not say, "Hey, if I could do anything in my life, I'd be a dishwasher
Because
because
the
it's so
pay.
because it's so
Because the pay.
cushy."
no, it's the pay. It sucks compared to like whatever a real job. But it's not hard work. I mean, you're on your feet. Big whoop. I mean, that's a little exercise I get in a day. Thank God I had that job instead of like being like an IT guy who sits down all the time. I'd be 500 pounds instead of 300 pounds. So I'm grateful that I
Well, that's
landed
good.
in a shitty spot.
No, that's
Low
important.
pay.
Framing is so important, Greg. I'm glad you brought it up. I just want to say that putting things in proper perspective, no matter what station of life you're in, whether you're Jeff Bezos or Greg Pettix, proper
I
frame.
think I'm happier than Jeff Bezos. I've always been the king of silver linings.
I don't think
yeah.
Greg. I don't think Jeff feels emotions like we feel them. I think it's
I think you're right.
I don't think he's from this planet. I don't think Elon is either.
If there are elves and lasers, they are in those rocket ships that both Bezos and Musk sent out into space, though.
Yes, that's where the lasers and the elves are going. Out into space.
Are those rocket ships manned with elves with lasers?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that the plan?
Yes, they are, Greg.
Where do you think Santa's elves went? Why do you think there was that controversy about the North Pole?
They got some.
That's why
They got to
they
do
did it.
something outside of December, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get a present last year. I think they're not there anymore.
It's the Santa's elves are the ones that are on Bezos ships because
Okay.
Jeff bought the whole Santa operation. Amazon owns Christmas. I mean, who doesn't know that to be true? So
Christmas, Arbor Day, all of them.
Santa works for him. Yeah, pretty much all the holidays. You know,
Yeah.
Every
really
day's a
a
holiday.
great show is every day is a holiday. That would be an interesting show to do.
We should have had that as a client, I
Oh,
think.
God, I wish we did.
I would throw that in the hat, you know, for maybe next week.
Next week we do have a comedian as a guest. His name is Keith Ross Nelson. And,
he's got 3 names.
He's
So
legit. He's a legit comedian, though. He's performed all over the country, and
Is
been
he
doing
an
it for a long, long
Has
time.
he ever assassinated anyone?
He probably
He might
has.
have. He actually knows kung fu.
See,
Yeah.
Kung Fu assassin.
The other interesting thing is that he's originally from Portland, Oregon, too. So that'll be something that can be talked about.
How old is he? Roughly.
I think he's like 10 years older than me, so I think he's like in his mid-60s.
Oh, so we can ask him about Portland lore.
Sure, you could. You could talk to him about whatever you want to ask him about, Greg.
I want to ask him
Anything.
about elves.
Elves with lasers? He might have a
Yeah.
response to it, hopefully. Hopefully he would have a response to that.
I'd like to talk to him about that.
Anyway,
do you
he's
think
scheduled.
there'll be-
I sent him an email to confirm, and I haven't gotten a confirmation back. Hopefully he will be here, so that is the plan.
Do you think
However,
it'll
in
be
2
funnier than
weeks, legitimately, we have the guy who played Chip Douglas on My Three Sons.
I can't believe you've been hiding that under your ass for 2 years.
That just came out of a conversation yesterday. Actually, that's where it happened that
Has he
quickly.
done anything?
He's done many
Since?
things. Yeah, he's done
Really?
many things. But we'll talk about that in 2 weeks. He'll be on the 7th of September.
He was the young one, right? The little one?
No, the
he
middle
and
one.
Fred McMurray were the only ones that were in every season of My Three Sons.
I think
Okay, so he was the
Chip
middle
was
one.
the youngest, the nerd.
He was until the adopted cousin or something came. The adopted brother
Oh,
came
I
in.
don't remember that.
Yeah, Ernie came in at a certain point.
Ernie?
Who actually was his real brother. So he came
Really?
into the show. Yeah.
Oh,
So
well,
Barry Livingston. But again, that's a different episode. We can get into those things. But I will warn you, he is quite the talker. If you remember Howard Bloom from before, who was quite the
Yeah.
talker, and it took a little bit of work of like ending the flow, it's going to be almost as tricky.
Yeah, but Howard Bloom
But he
talked
has
about
really
really
interesting stories there too.
mm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was saying Howard Bloom had really interesting stuff to say. I didn't care.
no, well,
that
this
he-
guy probably has really interesting stuff to say too.
This guy's talking about how Jodie Foster and Harrison Ford kind of came through the doors of My Three Sons in the early days of their careers. Like Harrison Ford was like an extra on the show at one point, and
Yeah,
you know, like a
yeah.
lot of people who kind of didn't necessarily get their start, but some of them did on that show as a bit player of some kind.
I'll have to see if they have those on YouTube somewhere. I feel
With
like
My
I
Three
should watch
Sons?
it. Yeah.
Yeah, My Three Sons was, according to him, it was the second longest running sitcom in history.
Yeah, it was around for a
After
long time.
Ozzie and Harriet.
That was number 1.
Yeah.
I don't know. That
According to
I've ever
him. I haven't looked these things up to confirm the information, but I was thinking like Simpsons, but I guess Simpsons isn't really a sitcom because it's a cartoon.
It is though.
I've
Yeah, but
seen
it's a
around for-
cartoon, so it falls
Yes.
under different parameters.
Yeah.
You know, it's like lazy writing in The Simpsons because it's fantasy, and they can get away with things that you can't get away
Oh,
with in normal.
Someone who's never seen the Simpsons, one of the best shows.
I know what a cartoon is, Greg, so I
You've
can
never
tell the
seen
difference.
Simpsons.
But I know what a cartoon is, Greg, and they don't follow the lines of physics like other
No,
shows
wait.
do.
But that's
Wait a
funnier.
You've
Humor
never
is a-
seen an
that's
episode
rough.
of The Simpsons?
No.
I think I've seen a couple.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's say that I don't even
So he
know
doesn't
how
know
to
our
be
culture.
alive at this point and not having seen it.
Yeah, he
Or no
doesn't
Bart
know our
Simpson.
culture.
I
It's
don't know
like-
our culture.
Yeah, that's
What
our
culture is
Your
Simpsons.
culture, you mean, Greg? Your specific
no,
culture,
it's
yes.
America's culture.
It's not
Everyone
America's.
knows The Simpsons.
Not
That is
everyone
like-
has watched The Simpsons.
I'm pretty sure 99% of people, kids I know,
Is it-
21-year-olds watch that
it's-
shit.
It's a little narrow of you to say that's America's culture. I mean, The Simpsons is an international.
Exactly. That's true.
I mean, it's
It's
not
hugely popular with the Aborigines in Australia.
It's 50 languages.
As they watch it on their trees.
trees. Yes.
pretty. Well, you're gonna get
Yeah.
kicked off of TikTok.
All those,
if you get that kind of talk.
sorry, TikTok.
So they
That's
they
so
can only
bad.
watch TV on trees. Is
Well,
that
they're
what
all
it is?
running around in loincloths, aren't they?
Oh, are they? Yeah,
Playing their
Oh.
didgeridoos.
Hey, is that what they call it?
Yes. It's
Oh,
exactly
I
what
didn't-
they call a
had
didgeridoo.
no
is a
idea.
Is that like the
didgeridoo.
skin flute?
No, it's an actual instrument.
I was out on Mississippi Avenue and some girl asked me what a didgeridoo, and I didn't know what she was talking about.
And
so
you
I
didn't have your
just
$5.
No, I had nothing on me.
$5. That's
She
a
looks like
cheap
more than
didgeridoo.
$5. That's, yeah.
She was gonna didgeridoo you.
Was she an elf or a laser?
She was kind of elfish, I would say.
Okay.
More dwarfish than elfish.
You know, I've actually listened to our podcast from last week like 3 times already because I enjoyed that episode so much. The whole nuts and fruits and seeds thing. I don't know why, but
It was a pretty good one, I have to admit.
something kind of stuck with me about that one. It was because of this confusion about it all. Anyway, but getting back into our current client, though,
let's do
we
it.
haven't really
Let's
given
try.
a whole lot of attention to other than Greg complaining about lazy writing in fantasy,
Yeah.
which is unfair, honestly.
I'm not saying you have to be a lazy writer to be a fantasy writer, but you have more leeway to do it. You could just be like, pull something out
The
of your ass.
leeway is there for both genres. Of
No,
science
but
fiction
science
or fan-
fiction actually
Yes,
has-
yes, it is.
No, that's bad science
Yes,
fiction.
stop saying
Then
no,
that guy
Greg.
didn't write
You're
good
wrong.
science
You're
fiction.
wrong, wrong,
No,
wrong.
that's bad science fiction.
Yes,
Science
you're in-
fiction guys would say,
Right, but it
"You're
can
a bad
still happen.
Science fiction writer. It's called science fiction for a reason.
It's called science fiction for a reason.
Yes,
Because of the fiction part of it.
Yeah, and when you read like fucking Madame Bovary, it's not like, yeah, it's realistic. An angel is a flying
Right, but
cow.
Madame Bovary isn't science fiction.
No, it's fiction. You're acting like.
Why are you saying no all the time?
Because you're acting like fiction makes.
No,
it
because you just
everything
can't help yourself. You
excuse.
keep having to say the word no all the time.
No, you just said.
So
no
you
to
just
me.
did it again. You did it again.
No, because you're saying
You did it then
this
too.
truth.
You did it
Because
again.
You keep saying things wrongly, so I'm correcting you. Saying,
No, I
that's
said
not
no.
true.
That you
No,
keep saying
fiction.
no.
No.
Fiction has to follow the rules of reality. Good fiction
No.
usually. It's not like at the end of War and Peace, the general fucking got laser powers in his eyes and blew up the other army.
Then it would be
No.
science fiction.
Yes,
No.
no, it would be bad science fiction.
But
It's
it'd still be
what?
science fiction,
You didn't
Greg.
explain this. It would be bad.
It doesn't
really
have
bad.
all science fiction doesn't have to explain everything. It
bad
doesn't have to. It takes things for granted, like you
It would
did
be
with
bad
many
science
things in science fiction, Greg.
It would be bad
For
science
example, as we mentioned before, the food creators in Star Trek.
That could be a
is
thing. They might be able to do
it's
that.
never been explained though, Greg.
Well, no, they take atoms and they reconfigure them.
Yeah, but it hasn't been
One
explained.
day we might be able to do that.
It hasn't been explained though.
It's not like they just said
Why the actual
makes food.
It's kind of like magic though, isn't it? So why don't we say that fantasy is merely science fiction where the science hasn't been explained yet?
Do you think if in 1890 someone saw us using our cell phones, they'd be like, "This is fucking magic"? There's like moving pictures on this little box.
All right, so many people thought the Force within Star Wars was the fantasy
That's
part of it.
it
right?
is. There's no
Until they brought in the midichlorians
yeah, and that ruined it.
to explain it. No, that's where the science comes in, Greg.
That's
Yeah.
not science.
Matt brings up a very excellent point as I think the more the Star Wars guy here. Your explanation of what makes good science fiction is absolutely what ruined Star Wars for me.
That's true.
When they
I
tried to
agree.
explain what the Force was, I'm like, you don't need to do this.
No.
But somebody, Greg, was sitting in their boardroom with your viewpoint saying, you can't have this have some sort of weird Zen religious bullshit.
No, I didn't like it. I did
got
appreciate
it.
that Star Wars had this like Eastern mythology, Eastern religion. Because
Yeah.
I grew up in the 70s, like you, and that was kind of groovy and cool, like Buddhism, and
But it's
I
not
kinda
bad
liked it.
writing. Is it bad writing?
no, it wasn't. But it did
Okay.
allow for them to write themselves out of quarter very easily, just to be like,
Sure.
all of a sudden
Did
Obi-Wan
you?
can
But did people
lift
enjoy
a
it?
mountain.
Right.
Huh?
I said, did people enjoy it? They did.
Yeah,
Was it
I did
fantasy?
too.
Was it science fiction?
You're
Science
right.
fiction is a really interesting thing because it is really both. I mean, I still think it's
It
science
is.
fiction,
It's not
but
science
like Matt,
fiction.
I agree that science fiction is a lot of things, and that particular one, and that space opera,
That's science fantasy.
is science fantasy, and I agree with that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you're shitting on a subgenre of the ultimate genre, which is science fiction.
Yeah,
You're saying the fantasy wing of the whole general fiction that's got this, science spectacular aspect to it. The fantasy part is where all the losers and lazy writers go.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. Well, I'm
Thanks.
just trying to
Thanks
clarify.
for summing it up.
yeah, but
I'm
you're
just
wrong,
saying-
Greg.
I don't know if I am.
Oh,
That's
I know that
stupid.
you are. So that's all you need to know. You need to know
I
that
think
I
science
know
fiction-
you're wrong, Greg.
I bet you if you looked at IQ statistics for science fiction authors versus fantasy authors, science fiction authors are probably smarter. I know it. Gut feeling.
You know what? I bet that a chess player's IQ is higher than mine, but I bet I can kick his ass. So what difference does that make?
I don't know.
See?
That
It's
Ameri-
Greg's weird elitism that he can't quite figure
not
out is what's
elitism.
going on.
It's not elitism. It's just like true. It's just like,
It's
take
true.
more skills.
It's not elitism. It's true when I say
No,
it's
you have
true.
you have to learn
Are you
science
saying
to
no
write good
again?
science fiction. You have to know some science to write good science fiction. Good science fiction, not
Yeah,
shitty,
look,
lazy science fiction.
science.
Fantasy, you can just pull it out of your ass. You
That's
like, "Eh,
incorrect.
it's an
I
elf."
mean, if it's a good fantasy story, you can't pull it out of your ass.
You can.
No.
And the real problem with this is you got to look at it from the perspective that I think Greg's coming from, which is science is what really is important. And smart people believe in science, and science is what drives us forward. That's why the fact that eugenics died as a science, I still don't understand to this day, because it follows Darwin's purposes. It looks at breeding.
It does, but it's unethical. Sure. It makes sense. We'd have a better class of humans if everyone was eugenic. There'd be less
Right.
kids born who are retarded and
That's
whatever.
why government mandates.
Theoretically.
Theoretically.
No, we probably would.
But government mandates telling you what to do because they that's important.
But we learned last week that Greg often does not believe in scientists. He said it a number
No,
of times.
just in when they classify nuts.
He
Sorry.
is against botanists, is what he is.
I do think that that's proper science. I'm not going to say no. Tomato was.
You
not a
said
fruit.
you were going to grab your MAGA hat and you said "fuck the scientists." Those were your
I was
exact
joking,
words.
obviously.
Was that lazy
Can you
speaking,
picture me
Greg?
in a MAGA hat?
Yes, I
Yeah.
can.
Yeah,
Especially with
okay.
that current haircut, I can picture
Fucking
you.
communist Greg Pettix.
I can
MAGA.
totally picture you having a Confederate flag bandana right
I'm
now.
gonna fucking bash your teeth against a curb right now. I'm gonna put your fucking teeth against a curb and kick the back of your head.
Now we got a strike on YouTube.
It's like violence. He's
I
so
know.
violent there.
I was going along with the joke because I do look like a skinhead, and I'm an old white.
You're
man,
turning
so-
into American History Q.
That's right.
Yeah, well, the elves with the lasers are very upset with you. And of course, we know that elf with the laser is Yoda. Yoda is the optimum
Yep.
elf with the laser.
He is
Because he's got the
exactly-
pointed ears.
Really, honestly, if you think about it, all the Jedis, those are the elves with lasers. They're magical. They have this council. They're
Yeah.
not really part of the government, but they're kind of outside it. They're in touch with nature. No, elves and Jedi Knights. Jedi Knights are just basically elves.
Yeah, but who do the Jedi work for?
That's the thing. They don't work
righteousness.
for anybody. It's a cooperative.
Yeah, but if it's
energy.
righteousness, how do they feed themselves?
They get money from the government. That's why.
Okay, so they work for the government then.
Yeah, they were kind of kissing Palpatine's ass like most of the movie.
Yeah. So they're
Okay,
basically
what's
like an NGO.
Yeah, it's like the United Nations, but it's the Jedi.
So the
That's why
Jedi
they
were,
always lose. That's
or the
why
Jedi were like the Pinkertons,
Yeah. When I
No.
watched,
hired
when I
from
watched-
special interests to go.
They would not do that evil shit. They were
when I
always
watched it from back
righteous.
to back, the whole series in sequence, you realize how dumb the Rebel Alliance and the Jedi's are. It's
Oh, they're
like-
pretty stupid. Yeah.
Oh, they're so dumb. Like
they're
they're
like
going,
Democrats, and then the
They're just
Republicans
so-
of the Empire.
I'm not. I didn't say that. You said that. I'm just saying.
I did. I did say that.
Yeah, but the
I'm just saying-
Republicans are dumb too, though.
They're dumb too. They're not.
They're
so
all
wish-
pretty dumb.
I mean, I'm sure a lot of people wish they were the Empire, but they're not. They're just their own doofuses. They can't keep anything together.
So give me an example. Why is the Alliance so dumb and the Jedis?
Because they couldn't spot what Palpatine was doing.
The whole thing was happening right in front of their eyes, and they kept saying things like, "Oh, we should think about this. We'll talk about it next week." They were just a bunch of
let's have a council.
Bureaucrats.
They're basically bureaucrats, is what they were.
Right. Mace Windu comes in. He's like, "Yoda, it's bad." He's like, "I know. I felt it. What should we do?" "I don't know. They understand us now." And I'm like, "It's one guy. There's like 9 of you. Wow." You were killed by the clones. The clones couldn't hit the broadside of a barn in any other thing except apparently killing Jedi. They were excellent at.
And actually, that should be a key piece of evidence for cloning should be outlawed. Is it turns people into horrible marksmen.
Terrible shooters.
Terrible.
Shooters.
They can't get things done. So that's why you shouldn't clone people. It isn't because of the ethical permutations of it.
No.
What was that, Greg?
The NRA has been lobbying against cloning for years because of that.
Right.
Yes, I know. And
they would make horrible NRA members, and then they would be hitting the wrong people, and it would ruin it for the NRA's political aspirations. You're absolutely correct.
In fact, I was talking to Alex Jones just last week, and I think that a lot of the school shooters and a lot of this violence we're seeing, these are actually clones.
You know, the thing that bothers me about Alex Jones is that I used to work with a guy named Alex Jones who was a good friend of mine. And that was before this Alex Jones became famous. And then I started hearing about the current Alex Jones, and I'm like, "Alex, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "No, this is not a well-spoken, erudite African-American gentleman who went to MIT.
The Alex Jones.
This is a psychotic conspiracy theorist. They're not the same person."
No, not at all.
I'm like, "Oh, my poor friend Alex."
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Did you guys know the comedian Doug Stanhope?
Yes.
I've heard of him.
On one of his DVDs, he has an extra where it's like in 2000. He used to be friends with Alex Jones, and Alex Jones was just like a contrarian, libertarian type.
Is that a CUN contrarian or a CON contrarian?
Oh, contrarian? No, he was a contrarian. He's a contrarian now, but he actually seemed like this fun guy. Like this footage of him, like opening up for Doug, like introducing him. He's like, "Alex, I want you to introduce me. You're such a character." And he was this big fun party guy who was a little, outside the normal beliefs. And then he's full on like.
Well, he's created a persona like Glenn Beck did. These are guys who know how to. They knew how to manipulate a certain side of the right wing. And they're doing an excellent job of it.
I was interviewed multiple times by Alex Jones, and at least once by Glenn Beck, because Glenn Beck had a talk show here in Tampa. Back in Tampa years ago, and I was on a show. I was on Alex Jones' show a couple times, and they were obviously right wing, and both of them were much more libertarian, which is the only reason they were talking to me.
Was this when you were part of the UFO magazine?
No.
Oh, okay. This is during the tax days.
This is tax days.
I got it.
They want to talk to you about libertarian stuff.
They wanted to talk to him about his goggles.
They want to talk to me about my goggles. It was libertarian stuff. But they didn't seem as crazy as either one of them do now. In fact, although I feel like Glenn Beck has kind of sort of self-righted himself, mostly through a series of failures. He's being more like the Glenn Beck that I kind of sort of knew. And Alex Jones he's just a broken vessel, the poor guy. I kind of feel sorry for him a little bit.
I don't feel sorry for him at all. No. Not after all the Sandy Hook nonsense. No, fuck that guy.
It.
Yeah.
I get it, but I just, whatever.
He's as bad as Trump in that case,
I gotta say though, he still seems like he'd be a fun guy to have a beer with. It would be
absolutely.
Like a fun night.
Well, I mean, if we were to have like a fourth person as part of the show, Alex Jones would be the guy.
Oh my God, he's fantastic.
We never get a word in edgewise.
He's so bananas. Oh my God, no, he'd be great. But yeah, I'd go have a beer with Alex Jones. I wouldn't, listen to anything he had to say, but I'd listen to it.
Greg, you would definitely get a word in edgewise because you're a master interrupter.
What?
Yeah, but not with Alex Jones. You're not a massive uninterrupter. It's easy to interrupt you, but Alex Jones would probably just barrel over you with that voice of his. "I have tiger blood. Shut up, Greg."
That's a different guy. That's Charlie Sheen.
No, what he says something else about blood, like I've got like dolphin blood or.
Oh no, he talks about how human he is, because there's the underlying thing, which you really got to do a deep dive into Alex Jones and his beliefs about interdimensional vampires and UFOs and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, the truth is Alex Jones is mentally unwell. That's really the truth. So when I say I'm sorry for him, I don't think it's his fault. I think he's gone fucking crazy. And well, whatever. He made choices.
Yeah,
a lot
choices.
of drugs. Right. The point is,
but he wasn't always that crazy. It seemed like he was kind of fun-loving. Dude.
If you have a trigger warning, if you have a parent who's an alcoholic, probably your early memories of that parent are not bad. But by the time that you were an adult, the toll that it had taken on that person was obvious. So
Greg.
Things get worse.
He's talking about you, Greg.
No, I'm not talking. That wasn't a sideways.
My parents, I guess, technically were alcoholics.
Greg doesn't have any kids to go, Dad, why are you in the kitchen naked talking to the box?
Why are you
play with us? Play with us, Daddy. We've made finger puppets.
Speaking of people with mental issues, it's time for Food is for Eating to come on. So let's.
So we're like an hour late on that one.
No, we had a lot of discussions prior to this, so we're not really running behind per se. We're not.
At Safe Mart, it's a Safe Mart. Time to Safe Mart and be safe.
Safe Mart is a proud sponsor of Food is for Eating with Waspy Soda Pop. Today's special, 3 cubic feet of swamp gas for only $52.26. Come get some. Safe Mart. Be safe.
Food is for eating. Food is for eating. Food is for eating with Waspy Soda Pop.
Hey there, everybody. This is Waspy Soda Pop, and I have probably the finest recipe I have ever come across. Maybe not. Anyway, this is hummin' hummus. Here are the ingredients. You want to get a 15-ounce can of chickpeas. Do not drain them. Or about 2 cups drained. Cooked chickpeas. Get 3 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. You'll know it's extra virgin because of the label. What were you thinking? 3 tablespoons of tahini. You know what that is? It's like peanut butter but made of sesame seeds. 1.5 tablespoons of freshly squeezed lemon juice from a half a lemon. You can get more if you need it. You want to get 1 medium-sized harmonica in the key of C, 1 small clove of garlic, coarsely chopped, 1 teaspoon of salt, and half a teaspoon of freshly ground black pepper. That's right, freshly ground. You don't want that stuff ground from years ago. You want to do it today or whenever you decide to finally make this. All right, we're going to move along to the instructions because that's usually what comes after you have the ingredients. Some people don't know that. You got to tell them. You go, yeah, instructions, you get them after you find out what you're going to use. And they go, really? I don't know. I've never actually met anybody like that. Let's move along. First, you want to place the harmonica in your mouth and hold firmly with your lips. You breathe in and out during the process of making the hummus. Never allow the harmonica to leave your mouth. Consequences will happen. You drain the chickpeas into a strainer, reserving the liquid from the can. If time and patience allow, which means if you're not too crazy, pinch the skins from each of the chickpeas. This will make your hummus much smoother. Combine the chickpeas, the olive oil, the tahini, the lemon juice, the garlic, the salt, and the pepper in the bowl of the food processor, fitted with a blade attachment or a blender. Either one will work. Don't drop that harmonica. Remember, you need this. Process the hummus continuously until it becomes very smooth, about 5 minutes. Scrape down the sides of the bowl as you need to integrate any of the large chunks. You should be having a regular rhythm by now, breathing in and out through the harmonica. You should go, well, I guess that's more of like a bagpipe or a foghorn. But anyway, you know what a harmonica sounds like. It'll work. Taste and add more of any of the ingredients to taste. If your hummus is stiffer than you like, blend 2 to 3 tablespoons of the reserved chickpea liquid to thin it out, make the hummus creamier. Finally, you scrape the hummus into a bowl. Then you spit the harmonica into the bowl and you serve it all with pita chips or raw vegetables. That way other people can hum while they eat their hummus too. There you have it. That's hummin' hummus. It's the best. This is Waspy Soda Pop and Food is for Eating. Later, people.
Later? Later?
I think you said later, like goodbye.
Oh,
Yeah, I think.
I think Waspy needs some more meds.
I don't. It seems like it would be challenging to have a harmonica in your mouth the entire time you're creating hummus.
Well, it doesn't
I
seem
would
as bad
agree.
as having a monkey help you make a meal. Who'd just be throwing shit around and
If it's a
shit.
trained monkey, it'd be fine. I'm just thinking, like, if I put something in my mouth for the rest of the show,
That's
like,
great.
how-
Let's keep
Let's
this
do it.
in for
Let's do
every
it.
episode.
if it
Every
was like a
episode.
harmonica, I always think it'll get incredibly annoying at a certain point.
Oh, for sure.
Ah.
For sure. It's annoying right now.
The
if you
cardboard on
do
that would
that,
start to get me.
TikTok wouldn't be able to hear your hate speech anymore.
Greg, what happened to your visual there? It's not sideways anymore.
I don't
It's
know.
like vertical.
Oh yeah. But I'm just saying, if you did have a piece of paper in your mouth every time we did the show, we wouldn't get kicked off TikTok so much. Because they wouldn't hear when you say something hateful,
Perhaps. I don't think I say anything hateful.
genocidal. Apparently,
Maybe a
we're
little
accused
genocide, but hateful, not necessarily. I'm all for the genocide part, but the non-hateful part.
The non-hateful genocide.
Right?
That's the best time.
Exactly. When it's done kindly. The kind
Is swamp
genocide.
gas- Is swamp gas safe?
Depends upon like how much of it you get. You can use it to heat things.
Okay,
But you shouldn't
But-
smoke around it.
No, that's
Yeah.
probably not a good
you
idea.
breathe it in, it's probably not good, right?
But I think that actually explains what did eventually happen to Alex Jones was he spent too much time around swamp gas and Will o'
'cause
the
he
Wisps as well.
He went to Safe Mart, which claims
A
to be
little
safe,
bit too much of
and they're
that.
selling swamp gas.
Hmm?
Seems like
Swamp
Safe
gas?
Mart. See, yeah, Safe Mart has false
What,
advertising.
that was the
Yeah,
question.
be
I wanted to know, like, I get like my Freddy points,
Uh,
or like fuel points. Can I apply those to the swamp gas at Safe Mart? Do you know?
I think it's a different company. I don't think you would be able to apply your Fred Meyers
But
points.
isn't there just sort of a Portland, we're all in this together sort of attitude about it all?
I don't know where Safe Mart is. I
They're
don't think
in
they're. I don't think they're in Oregon. I
They're
think
in
they're
Jupiter.
like somewhere near wherever Waspy Soda Pop has come from. I think it may be
Arkansas?
from an actual. I'm starting to think that he did appear out of a swamp, and that's where these ideas come from.
Sounds like.
But
Is that
if you
swamp
get 3
thing?
cubic feet of swamp gas for $52, I don't know what you do with it. I guess you could put it in like a propane container or something.
You could fake a UFO thing, because most UFOs are written off as swamp gas.
Yes, most UFOs they're written off as swamp gas.
Yeah,
what I was
that's
gonna
the
do.
they always
Truth.
say, "Oh, it's just swamp gas." That's,
Yeah, I was gonna
that's what you
take it
saw,
out and-
those lights.
Like all of the people who were not in swamps, they were like, it's all attributed to swamp
No,
gas.
because they always were.
You
near
started off
swamps.
saying no again. What is with your habit?
What? No,
Your
because
habitual.
when
You did it
say-
again. You did it
But
then
I have
too.
to negate what the wrong thing you're saying. Of course, I'm going to say no. You're saying something wrong. So
That's
I'm gonna say
incorrect.
no.
I think you're doing it
That's
out of habit,
true.
is what I think it is. I think you're doing it
No.
like some kind of. So you did it
No.
again, like a nervous
No.
tick. It is a nervous tick now.
No, it's not.
See, did it again.
I'm saying that was a thing. If you
Uh-huh.
read UFO literature, there's always swamp gas or a weather balloon.
Always.
These nebulous weather balloons, which I've never seen in my life. Supposedly,
You've
they're.
never seen a weather balloon? You should
I've never
Google
seen
that.
one. No, but apparently
Google it.
they'd always explain UFOs that way.
If
They
you
would
want to
say,
see a whole bunch
You know
of
what?
weather balloons at once, David Blaine did a special where he actually went up into the sky attached to a number of weather balloons. It's quite fascinating, actually. He had to get a balloon operator's license before he could do that particular special.
that's a thing, a balloon. Like,
Depending on how high.
But these
you
are
go.
weather balloons. But he had to still get a license to be able to, otherwise the government wouldn't let him go up into the sky.
wow.
And
You
then
have to have a
and-
license. You have to license to fly a drone at a certain level and in certain areas.
yeah, in this
Really?
case, it was him actually going up, holding on to a thing like from the movie Up. He was kind of doing it for his kid, so he was.
Oh, I think I saw that on YouTube or something. I didn't watch it, but
I watched
yeah.
most of it. I didn't watch it all, but it was really
Was there
quite.
magic involved, or is just like a stunt?
He's more of a stunt guy these
He's a
days
stunt
than the
guy.
magic,
Sure.
but he does things which are out of the ordinary for normal people. And he's a quite fascinating individual.
A lot of that stuff he does is just body like conditioning stuff, like holding your breath or like shoving things through your arms. He's really doing that. He's just
He's
Yeah.
found a way to be able to hold his breath underwater for like 5 minutes.
it's bananas.
Excuse me?
All right.
Who are you? What do you want? Are you Greg's new girlfriend? What's going on?
No, what's the loudmouth outside the window?
Ah, you loudmouths outside the window. You just shut up out there.
Yeah.
Don't you know this is important? This is groundbreaking stuff we're doing in here.
One podcast over here. I'm podcasting over here. What the fuck?
So anyway, David Blaine, he has that. He taught people some of the techniques. So he taught like some celebrities how to hold breath too, and so they were able to hold it for like a couple of minutes as well. I'm like, oh, so he does like these legitimate techniques, which apparently actually work, where most people can't do it that long. So he's kind of has this incredibly bland personality, but does these incredible things. You know, it's hard to fault
like his
the guy.
early ABC specials. I remember videotaping those in the '90s, and I was like showing them to all my friends. I was like, "This guy's amazing." And I know he gets a bad rap now. People make jokes about David Blaine, like, "What a loser." It's like, no, those are pretty amazing. Like, he does really good.
I don't know who's calling him a loser, but okay.
I don't know. I've literally had sitcoms where like, "Oh, you dated David Blaine?" Or, "Oh, God, gross."
No. David Blaine is cool because what he's doing is not. You know, Chris Angel. If you want to bag on somebody, you can bag on Chris Angel because even though I mean his magic is you know, if you don't know what's going on, it's amazing. But it's all just, you know, stuff. You know, it's like a plexiglass under the pool. You know, and he's like, oh.
Yeah.
David Blaine is really swallowing frogs. I mean, it's not, I wouldn't even call it magic. It's not a show. He's doing something.
It's almost like Jackass stuff.
He's doing like the things that the fakers in India would do way back when, you know, they would lay on the bed of nails type of things.
Like, some of them were fakers and some of them
weren't. Faker, Fakir.
Yes, fakir, right.
You pronounce it however you want. So anyway.
You just said faker and I thought faker.
I always thought that's how it was pronounced.
I have no idea. Don't care.
But I understand how it could be confused the way that I pronounced it, but then I had to spell it the way it's spelled.
No.
Thanks, Greg. So I don't know. David Blaine's a different cat.
He's kind of like an American yogi, I suppose.
Yeah, kind of.
He's finding things to do with the body that most people don't take the time to figure out because they're not entertainers.
He's very pretentious about it. Like those early specials, he was just walking around like Harlem, like these shitty parts of the cities.
I know, and he's still not a pretentious guy either. He just kind of like does these things, and he goes, "Hey, here's the thing," and you're like, "Excuse me." What I thought, I watched one clip where he was on the Tonight Show, and he had a couple of the guys from the Roots participate in the joke, and Questlove, who's the drummer for the Roots. He literally looked at him like, he literally looked at David Blaine like he was the incarnation of the devil or something. His eyes were like bugging out, and he's like, "Oh no, my grandmother told me about people like you," type of thing.
That's what those first specials were like. These girls, teenage girls in like Harlem, would just be like, "Get the fuck out of here! Get away!" and run away.
Well, he did this one trick with three young men, probably late teenagers, where he said he would turn their dollar bill into $100 bill, and then he does it. And you know what they do? They grab it and bolt. They like ran as fast as they could away from him. It was the funniest thing. And he's just kind of looking off at him, cracking up himself because they stole his money.
But I'm sure he could snap his fingers and turn it back into a $1 bill.
I don't think he has real magical powers, Greg.
Greg, that's lazy writing. What you did right there, that's lazy writing. No,
that's you like being part of the masses, Greg, and that's very sad.
Top of the masses is fantasy. That's what fantasy authors do. Just pull shit out of their ass.
That's a different trick. That's the Charlie Rose Sideshow Circus or something. That's
Charlie Rose, PBS interviewer.
I don't know. Whatever.
It's when Charlie Rose from the PBS interviews suddenly was getting like needles put through his nipples and being lifted
hanging by his nipples from a hook.
Yeah, that guy.
That's what he was all about. That's why they fired him, I think, was for that.
Jim Rose? Is that his
name? He was part of that whole scene.
I think he's talking about Jim Rose, yeah.
Yeah, the Lollapalooza guy.
The Circus of the Insane or something like that.
Yeah, that was
Speaking of the Circus of the Insane, it's time for us to ask Greg something. But we need to get a question from the audience. Hopefully Brendan has that available to him.
Where's my friend?
I don't think he's watching. I think it's just like it's recognizing that I have YouTube up on my screen and there's nobody actually paying attention to us anymore except for us. So either way, this still must be done.
He has an opinion, may not always be right. He's a real fake lawyer. He's old and he's white. Ask him a question, 'cause he's a good egg for bogus advice. Ask Greg. Ask Greg? Ask Greg!
Can you change the lyrics to he's old and he's brown? Because I'm half Hispanic.
No.
No?
No, because you're part of the España Hispanic, so you're definitely European.
You're
That's
conqueror,
Yes.
exploiter,
Colonizer.
colonizer.
We were
I'm working on my Northwest vocabulary. Sorry,
Colonizer.
colonizer.
So Brendan, what has
about
the
to
Peanut
focus.
Gallery come up with as a legal question to ask Greg that he will give bad legal advice for? Because we're not lawyers, everybody.
Let me take a look.
We're fake lawyers, in case people didn't
I still
know.
give good legal advice, even though I'm not a lawyer.
Bogus
All
advice,
right.
according to the jingle.
I'm good at this shit. I just have a knack.
No, bestiality we've covered. No.
I realize that I don't think I've seen Brendan without a ball cap on, and now I know why.
Why? Because I'm bald?
Because I saw the
You
top
still
of
got
your
the
head.
saving
It's-
grace, though. You still got the little fuzz.
Yeah.
Well, it's all growing back. So I have a interesting question. A lot of the usual degenerate stuff you normally get. This question comes to you from somebody about wills and estate planning, probate, that kind of stuff. Dear Greg, my father recently passed. We're members of the polygamous group of Mormons in southern Utah. He left me all of his wives. I consider this a joy and a burden, and am wondering if this is something I can refuse legally, and what steps I might take, and if there's a special sort of lawyer that I should be looking for, since these are living human beings. Yours truly, cheers, Jeremiah.
So does Jeremiah, he says it's a joy and a burden. Which side is he falling on? He doesn't want the
He doesn't
wives.
have that interpretation. You just have to go with what he's told you, Greg. He
I
doesn't
know,
have any more
he told
information.
me, he said it's a joy and a burden, so... maybe
Right,
just
but
take
it's
it.
not explained in the letter. You have to go with what he's given you. That's all you got.
It's very
There's no more.
confusing.
It's
Well,
lazy
what's
writing,
the-
Greg. I understand that Jeremiah is a lazy writer. He's left.
He is. He's a fantasy, right? This is like a fantasy novel. So
Yeah.
we're in Narnia right now.
I would assume that the joy is having, his former mothers now belonging to him.
Greg is going to have to
That's-
make that assumption, though. He's the one providing the
That's
advice.
joyous. That's a wonderful thing. I'm sure
Anyway,
that's true.
do you want to answer the question, Greg, or should I go back to
I'm
this?
saying, I got to
animal-
wrap my head around it. This is a very unprecedented legal
I know.
question.
Do you need him to repeat the question, Greg?
No, I got it,
Okay.
but I'm confused about the wording.
So why don't
So-
you repeat the question and see if that helps you?
He said that his father died and left him his wives,
Mm-hmm.
his inheritance, and he has to now take care of these wives. So that's the burden.
So what's the legal question?
Well, there's a lot. First of all, bigamy is illegal. It still is, even if you're Mormon. It's not allowed. So legally, you don't got to do shit. You can be like, well, my dad shouldn't have had 8 wives. I don't need to take them on. They're not real wives. They're illegal.
Okay.
So,
Is at least one of them legal?
yes, one of them might be. So you might have to marry your one stepmom, but not 8.
But wouldn't that in itself be illegal, marrying your stepmom or your mom?
No, I don't think there's a.
I mean, he
according
doesn't
to the-
specify in the letter like any one of these is his actual biological mother. So
According
they
to
all could be-
RedTube, you can fuck your stepmom and stepsisters and stepfathers to your heart's content.
is that
parents
only if they're
become a
trapped in the dryer?
Yes, exactly. So
Okay.
it's not de jure, but it's de facto. That's the law. It's become
Right.
just a thing. The law really hasn't stepped up and like laid out the parameters of how this works, but apparently it's accepted in our society. So I don't think Jeremiah will have to deal with any legal ramifications. But the choice is he's gonna have to pick the stepmom that he likes the most.
Is RedTube like a special division of Martindale Hubble?
I don't know what that is.
Martindale Hubble is a series of legal books that contain the precedents of legal
No, it is not.
Answer- Answers
I
in
was
this
thinking
country.
Black's law library. I don't remember that reference. But
Red Tube versus the state of Alabama.
I thought maybe it was like a special part of Martindale Hubble. This is for the lawyers.
No.
This is lawyer humor right now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Those lawyers that remember Martindale Hubble volumes.
So you're a better fake lawyer than I am, apparently. I don't even know the reference. But
Red
Tube, I'm saying when you come to de facto versus de jure, it's like what has become the norm, even though it's not codified in law. So apparently, yeah, you can marry your stepmom. There's no law against it. After your dad dies, I mean, you couldn't if you were still married to her. That would be bigamy, too. If she had 2 husbands. But, yeah, so I guess Jeremiah...
but are we getting, speaking as as studying at a Jesuit law school, are we getting down into principles versus particulars? Or should we argue that this is not normally what people would go through? So it
is not normal. But
it has, there's precedent outside of like what the traditional law might.
Well, I don't even know if there needs to be precedent. I really think there's never been a law that says you can't marry your stepmom once your dad's dead, or
right.
Even if you divorced her.
That's Oedipus Rex.
Yeah, it's called
that legal
precedent. Oedipus Rex.
Yeah,
it's the pursuit of happiness.
One of the Greek tragedies, Oedipus Rex. So I need to clarify: Martindale Hubble is not legal volumes that contain law precedent. They're volumes that contain the names of lawyers across the country. Is what Martindale Hubble is, and law firms.
Yellow pages. Okay.
Basically,
right.
yeah, but it tells about who they are. So my mistake. I give bad information.
No
worries. Is Red Tube in there though? Still?
I think they might be a law firm.
Or Pornhub, maybe.
Yes.
I'm writing back to Jeremiah and basically telling him, take a chill pill. You don't got to worry about it. Just decide which of your stepmoms you want to marry.
Exactly.
Okay.
The one that gave you the most cookies when you were a little boy. One that was nicest to you.
Does it have to be one of the older ones that sort of approximates the age of his actual mother, approximately?
No? Do the one you want as a wife, as a new wife, as a sister wife. Just
so no algorithm related to who he picks. Just go for your heart.
Follow your heart. That's what I tell Jeremiah. Follow your heart.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Greg. Once again, a riveting and scintillating discussion of our legal system brought to you from the non-expert, non-lawyer Greg. Okay, bringing us back to our client for today, which is Elves With Lasers.
Right.
And how much further we want to go on this. Greg has come to this conclusion that fantasy writers are all lazy and science fiction writers are not.
No, they just have the option to be lazier if they want to. There's some great fantasy authors out there who are very great writers.
Okay.
But you also can pull shit out of your ass for Duke's Ex Machina.
But you can do that for science fiction too.
But you gotta actually have something that sounds kind of logical.
So all fantasy writers are not good writers, but fantasy writers that follow some sort of procedure about explaining their magic are good. But those
that's good writing. Is good writing doesn't Duke's Ex Machina is a sign of a bad writer.
How many times are you gonna? You're pronouncing that like 4 or 5 different ways.
I know. I'm gonna keep changing it too. Do a machina. Usually that's a sign. That's not a good thing for a writer. That's usually like
it's washing machina, by the way.
That's a sign of a hack. I mean, that loses the reader. I'm sure you've read books.
We escalated to hack. We went from lazy to hack.
You read comic books or books growing up where you were like, "What the fuck was that ending? That's bullshit." Like, you built up this great drama where our hero's gonna make it. They can't make it. And then like some magical shit comes out of
it. It took me 25 years of marriage and 50 turns around the sun to get that jaded that I wasn't just enjoying whatever it was or turning it off, but sitting there and analyzing
I still liked the journey, but I was still disappointed at the ending sometimes. I was like, come on, that's the ending. You didn't earn that ending. The author didn't earn it. He just kind of pulled something out of his ass. There's some great stories. I'm not talking about great literature. I'm just talking about great storytelling where they're like, no, the seed of this ending was, we talked about it earlier. You didn't know it at the time. They planted the seeds. Yes, this could happen. It's logical.
So if I'm hearing right, the key to good writing is lots of exposition, lots of explaining how we got to where we are.
Not necessarily. I'm not saying it has to be boring and exposition heavy. I'm
if
just saying
somebody doesn't explain how the warp
it has an internal logic.
Problem.
yeah, like no matter how crazy the fantasy and or science fiction is, it has an internal logic. Like in Blade Runner, all of a sudden, like the replicants can fly in the last scene. Oh, all of a sudden, Roy Batty can fly off the building. No, the replicant, we know it's fake. It's fantasy. There's no replicants in our world.
So traveling
like
faster
robots.
than the speed of light doesn't seem like magic at all to you.
It does, but it is science. I mean,
it's science
like
just as
Arthur
much
C.
as
Clarke.
Gandalf summoning an evil demon. I mean, it makes about
I
as much
know, but
sense
that's just pretty easy,
mathematically.
but, like if you ever read Arthur C. Clarke or something, he explains it. He's actually like, yeah, faster than light travel due to Einsteinian physics works this way.
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's the story from Arthur C. Clarke called The 9 Billion Names of God, where he gets into the fact that once you hit that final name, God then appears. That seems like more of a fantasy story, even though he's known.
It does.
But he used the
That's not a
computer to
science
get
fiction
all of
story.
those names. So it was science fiction at the same time.
Okay, yeah, you're right. It is.
Right.
That's a nice blending.
And then he also did the story of Rose for Ecclesiastes, which goes straight out of the Bible. So anyway, the point being is
That's
that
Arthur C. Clarke, Isaac Asimov, these people, they're giants among what we're generally talking about in terms of, in my opinion, in terms of the general what we're talking about. So you'd have to use something that's a little more, common man than some of the great.
And I don't like to push it like glasses like this, like a nerd, but a Rose for Ecclesiastes is Roger's Lasny, by the way.
no, it's not.
Is
Is it? Wait a second.
I don't know.
It's a Lasny.
I thought. Why did I think it was? Why did I think it was Arthur? I think it was in a collection of stories that had them both in it. That's probably why.
I don't know. But I'm just saying.
It's a good story.
He's right
I
though.
mean,
It's the
it's
last
not-
name. It's
it
not
is-
Arthur C. Clarke.
I can barely remember it, but I remember liking it when I was a teenager.
Beauty's in the eye of the beholder,
Right, and that's a different science fiction story.
which is some really, it is. Splinter in the Mind's
Let me
Eye.
ask you guys, just in a personal thing, when you were teenagers, did you read more fantasy or science fiction, or like semi-hard?
I did both. I read
I was
both.
You did
probably
both.
I was probably 50-50. Like I said, I read science fiction. I played fantasy games.
Yeah,
So
I was.
they had two different meanings to me.
I loved Conan books. I loved Robert E. Howard, Solomon Kane, but I also was like,
Well, that's more swords and sorcery than like.
still
So I can
magic.
see if you were reading swords and sorcery stories, I can understand your perspective now because those weren't necessarily ones that had a whole logical process that was placed within their milieu of physics. Other than how hard can you swing that sword, and how many heads can you cut off in one sitting. But the sorcery does come into play as well. But there's a lot of science fiction like that too. Where
Robert E. Howard is like the jock.
Or superhero stuff. I mean, come on.
yeah, the superhero
Thanos,
stuff. 90%
Galactus.
of the superhero stuff is fantasy.
Yeah.
I would disagree. I would say it's science fiction based. It's so rich.
Galactus.
Wait.
Explain to me
What?
the science.
Yeah,
fiction.
he's a science fiction creature who eats planets. It's
Sure.
not fantasy.
makes-
It's like,
That's
they explain
fantasy.
it. He needs to eat the life source.
How
of
does he
planets.
survive in the vacuum of space?
Why would a creature develop into a giant humanoid that floats around and is so large he consumes...
Why doesn't he collapse upon his own weight?
Right.
Why
How
does he have a
move?
giant purple helmet? That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
So
that's
that's-
a legitimate question too. But
That's a-
we're
why
does
we're
it
not
need
talking
that-
about decorations. We're talking about the actual science. of
Fashion
this stuff.
sense.
Okay, but it's
Fashion
still not
sense
like
is out the
I'm a
window when we're
sorcerer
talking
from another
superheroes.
dimension who devours planets.
Why is it that cosmic rays would cause someone to turn into rubber?
It could
How is
happen.
this? How is
Oh,
the Silver
could it?
Surfer?
Because we've
Yeah.
seen this happen with anybody else who's like been affected
Well,
by
we
cosmic
haven't-
rays, where instead they just get cancer.
We haven't experimented enough with cosmic rays, man.
Really?
Yeah.
We
How is
need
the
to-
Silver Surfer the Silver Surfer? Why did when the Fantastic Four went in a spaceship they came back as a rock and a person? I mean, come on, radiation.
Okay, no, fine,
Okay.
you're right.
It's fantasy.
It's
it's
and
science-
okay.
It's
At least
fantasy
it's
in
like-
a science fiction form.
But at least they don't like push it down their ass. Like Spider-Man, all of a sudden can't be like, "Oh, I found a magic gem, I can fly now." When the
Hey,
vulture drops me,
I'm
Greg,
sure there's a
Robert-
multiverse version of Spider-Man where he flies.
probably
Yeah.
Spider-Woman could fly.
There's a Spider-Man that's a pig, for crying out loud.
It's true.
if you didn't like fantasy, it's okay.
I like fantasy. I loved Robert E. Howard shit. It was
Yeah.
fun as fuck.
I keep saying Robert E. Howard. Is there any other fantasy that you liked, Greg?
a lot of shit that nobody's ever heard of. There was this one book called Master of Hawks, which was like a lesbian fantasy book I read as a kid. And I barely understood it.
Did they drive a
It's like,
Subaru?
it's confusing.
by chance?
Why is that woman like really like that other woman?
It's fantasy. So
Oh.
Yeah, it was called
Oh.
Master of Hawks. Linda E.
the Hawks
Bushhager.
could actually transform into Subarus.
No, that explains it. They were like
travel
Transformers.
lesbians around. Like in a
Cool.
Dark Crystal. They fly
I'm
around on these Subaru.
I'm looking it up
Hawks.
on Kindle right now.
No, but I seriously looked her up finally after 30 years. I never heard her name again. Linda E. Bushhager, and then I looked her up. and I
Wait,
was like, oh,
Linda
yeah, she's
Bush Eater?
E. Bushhager.
E. Bush Eater?
Linda E. Oh my God! I didn't realize. It's very close. Good pun. Linda E. Bushhager, and
Yanker? She was
for some reason I loved
Bushhaker?
it.
Bush
Wait, what?
Yanker?
Not Bush Eater. Bush Yanker.
Yanker.
Bush Yanker.
Who's German? I think. I assume
She
she's German.
yanked bushes.
Yank
Yeah,
Busher.
she's a.
Say Bush.
Okay.
She yanked. She yanked bushes.
She
I
yanked
think I
them.
had one of those at the German place.
Which in
the other
German
night.
means licking.
I'm gonna go order it. Can I get a bush yanker, please? See what they
If you go
say.
to Germany, the lesbian bars are like, "Hey, you're a bushhager. Come on in."
I think
You
Jaeger
know-
means hunter in German, doesn't it?
I don't know.
So
I
Bush
think you're
Hunter
right.
is what it's sounding like now.
Yes.
Yeah, which right again fits in with lesbian.
Wow.
I think you might have had a pseudonym going on there.
But it was I mean, it wasn't good. I'm pretty sure it was shit fiction because I mean, I never went back to. I sold it years ago when I wanted money,
Yeah.
but I got a quarter for it. But it
Nice.
was, for some reason I loved it. It was just like when you're 13, you're not that discerning. It was like I loved hawks. I love the idea of like hawking. Those guys who are the hawks with their
Like
wrists.
hawking?
No, not that hawking.
I was hawking the other
Stephen
day.
Hawking?
I thought it was super cool. Like any character who had like a hawk who could be like, hawk.
Those are
Go.
usually falcons.
That's
Just-
usually
Yeah,
lazy
Falcon's
writers
great.
that used hawks, really.
I don't know. It's a
No.
real thing, Matt. It's
Hawks
a
are birds.
Hawks are real?
No, birds are not real.
Falcons
You know what I
are
like
real.
is I like stories that incorporated fantasy and science fiction. That was kind of what I enjoyed. So there was like a
I kinda
series
like
of
that
books.
too.
Yeah, it was a series of books from Piers Anthony, which were the Adept series, where you
The
had
Riverworld?
people. What?
Not the Riverworld. Sorry.
No, that's
Oh, that's not your name?
Philip Jose Farmer did Riverworld,
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Sorry to interrupt.
which was more science fiction than fantasy, but still, there's definitely a fantastic element to that, where everybody who had ever lived on Earth woke up on some planet that was circled
And
by a
fantasy
river.
characters like Tom Sawyer is there, right?
No, not
Robin
Tom
Hood.
Sawyer. Mark Twain was there.
No, I thought Tom Sawyer.
It wasn't.
Like,
There might have been a real Tom Sawyer that the story was based on, but it was Mark Twain who was there.
okay.
The Fabulous
Sorry.
Riverboat was all
Here's
about
Anthony though.
Mark Twain and King Richard hanging out together building a riverboat. But anyway, that's not my point. What I wanted to talk about was the books by Piers Anthony, the Adept books, where it takes place in a futuristic society where everyone is stuck between being citizens or serfs, which were the basically the servants of the citizens, and throughout their lives they have to play a game to be able to try and attain citizenship. And one of them comes across I guess a veil between worlds, where he finds himself in a fantasy world, and where people have duplicates with those who play the game, and those who are good at the game wind up having supernatural powers in higher evidence in that other world. So that was kind of an interesting twist on the science fiction fantasy realm. It's by combining the two. There was another one called I think
Hey,
a wizard,
Anthony,
a
by
wizard
the
in
way,
spite of himself, where a guy crash lands with a rocket on a planet where magic works. So I liked those combinations of stories, and that's why whenever you say things like these are lazy writers, I think you're missing the creativity that's involved. But especially if you like focus your time on the Robert E. Howard stories of Conan the Barbarian, I can see why your point of view would be skewed, because you were reading stuff that really wasn't that great.
No, he's a better writer than J.R.R. Tolkien. Robert E. Howard is a very vital writer. He was like almost like an outsider artist. His writing is very.
It's kind of like Banksy, but for fantasy writing.
Well, no, I think people knew who Robert E. Howard was. I think they had pictures of him.
Like Howard the Duck?
They made a movie about Robert E. Howard.
I saw Howard the Duck. It was a good movie.
Was it Robert E. Howard the Duck?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Robert E. Howard the Duck. That was his full
We had
name.
a sword. There was a Howard the Duck issue where he was like Conan. He had a sword and a loincloth. That's funny.
Howard the Duck is great. Let's talk more about Howard the Duck. Less about what the hell you guys are talking about.
No, the movie's a piece of shit, but the comics are some of the best comics.
Were they
ever
fantasy or science fiction? If you have a,
they're everything. They were satire, so they involved.
Oh, that's different.
Yeah, it's totally different.
Oh, okay.
So satire can't be fantasy or science fiction,
It
Greg?
can be. It was like I told you. Howard the Duck was a barbarian.
So would you consider Buckaroo Banzai to be satire or science fiction?
That's a good question. Actually, it's almost like a satire of science fiction.
It's science fiction, but it's absolutely satire-ish.
What was it a satire of?
Science
I think
fiction.
it's like a science fiction. It's sort of meta in that it's.
Pulp
You
heroes.
think it was making fun of science fiction?
Oh, to a
I don't
degree.
think you can really make fun of science fiction. Science fiction is so all-encompassing that
Yeah,
humor
they-
is
they-
within the
What
genre.
about Galaxy Quest? Wasn't that making fun of science fiction?
But it's still science fiction. It doesn't actually take
True.
away from it. It still is
No,
science fiction.
no.
Like I said, science fiction is one of those genres that everything is incorporated within its barriers.
I know.
And I'm just saying there are movies that poke fun at the concept of like Spaceballs or something, and they're just kind of making a comedy movie that's science fiction-y.
I would barely say that's a science fiction movie. It's a comedy movie that's using science fiction as a comedy trope.
It's a science fiction comedy. But it's totally science fiction, though, Greg.
But I think people who love science fiction wouldn't watch that movie.
Dark
They'd be
Helmet
I want to see a
doesn't
good science
actually
fiction
exist.
movie tonight. I'm going to rent Spaceballs. No, people would say, I want to watch a funny comedy. I'm going to rent Spaceballs.
This is starting to feel a little bit like Nuts and Grapes and shit. You know what I mean?
Nuts and grapes.
It's all about
Legumes?
what you call something based upon
Grape legumes.
how
I
you
know
want
it
to
is.
label
It's
it.
true. Because 1984 is not considered science fiction because it's, good. So it's literature.
That's not true, Greg. It is science
Yes,
fiction.
it is. It's in the literature section of every bookstore in America. There's no science fiction section that has George Orwell's 1984 in it.
I disagree.
I've
found that in a science fiction section, not necessarily a bookstore,
Really?
but of a library.
Really?
Really? Yes. It's like you
No.
can never believe
No.
things.
So the question then, my question, this is an interesting concept. My question is, at what point does a book that falls into a genre, mystery, science fiction, horror, at what point does it grow up into a real book? And who decides
What's a real book? What are you talking about?
I don't know, like
Like
Dracula.
literature? You mean?
Like Dracula is a horror book,
Yeah.
but
It's in the literature section.
see, using Greg's logic, it's graduated. It's ascended to the subject of
And it's not
literature.
that well written. It's not great. George
Okay,
Orwell's
let's-
1984 is amazing. It's a great book.
Well, okay, well,
Of
now
course, we're going to do
But it
this.
is-
We're going to have to add things
It
that
is science fiction.
this is something we have to add to a lot of these statements, which is the phrase "according to Greg."
No,
So with
according to
Dracula, as he says, it's not that well written. But again, we add "according to Greg" to
Not many
confirm
literary critics
that's where
were
this
saying,
comes from.
Bram Stoker was a great writer. No
But
literary
Mike,
critics are championing Bram Stoker. as the
According
great
to
writer.
Greg, I'm going to
No,
be doing air
it's-
quotes.
Look out! Just go look at literary criticism. Nobody says Bram Stoker is an
According
amazing
to
writer.
Greg.
okay, fine. My
So
point
don't
is,
trust literary criticism at all.
According
yeah.
to Greg.
Yeah.
The point, Greg,
Flaubert is equal to Robert E. Howard then. Who
According
cares
to
what
Greg.
the critics say.
the point is, Greg. Focus, Greg. The point is,
I am.
there is a point, according to your logic, that a book, whether you think it's poorly written or somebody thinks it's great, ceases to be the genre it is and becomes something else.
It doesn't
Right.
cease to be. It's still 1984 is a science fiction book. There's no,
Okay,
as far as
that's what
I'm
we're-
concerned, there's no argument. But it's never in the science fiction section because it's so well written.
According
It's
to Greg.
become- It's become one of the great books of the 20th century. Like
It
that's
is a
why we
very
read it in high
well-known
school.
book, but so
We
is
probably all
Dracula.
read it in high school, right? You
Everybody's
probably
read Dracula. How many vampire
No.
books?
But it wasn't
Are-
like my teachers never assigned me to read Dracula in high school. Like,
Sorry,
oh,
you went to a terrible high school.
Well, plus the
No,
parents,
really,
the parents
was it?
of certain districts probably wouldn't allow it to
did
be
your
the students
did
to
your
read it
school
either.
district
Bram
assign
Stoker's-
Dracula as a reading?
Bram Stoker's Dracula. I went to Bremerton High School and Bremerton
Yeah.
Middle. Was on a not was on a recommended list. It wasn't on a required list. These were books that they said you could read and would give you credit for them. These books you have to read. Like I had to read, I forget. I had to read some dumb books.
They just wanted you to read books. They were like, no one's reading.
Yeah,
let's
like
give them at least
Little
a list.
Women. I remember reading Little Women and going, I hate this book. But it was literature. I don't know what category it is. Science fiction.
I have to say, though, this is the perfect opportunity for us to move into our final segment of the show.
Oh, no.
This is the one that most people wait for if they've made it this long into the show.
Women.
What's that, Greg?
I've never read Little Women, so I hope Brandon talks about Little Women.
I'm just gonna do my forehead.
You just date Little Women. Anyway, so we're gonna go into our final segment of the show so that this can wrap things up completely. This is The Last Word with Brendan Haggerty. What was that, Greg?
Just that thing. Deepa, 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 deep. I still don't get it.
It's the Swedish chef is introducing me.
Yeah, it's the Swedish chef.
So what am I talking about today?
Whatever
You're talking about Elves with Lasers. You have the last word.
Lasers. So I think we've covered a lot of ground. The bottom line is this: elves with lasers just can't happen. We can't have elves with lasers. We shouldn't have elves with lasers. All lasers should be taken, not only from elves, but dwarves, orcs, Jedi Knights, all of them. The Jedi Alliance was a failure because obviously they listened to Greg too much. And in the end, we have just got to accept that all books are based on opinion, whether what genre they belong into, whether they're good or not. And that's it. Good night and good luck.
That's the final word?
I guess so.
Okay.
I don't like this final word business because then there's no rebuttal.
You've had all night to rebut, Greg.
I know, but then there's the final word where Brendan all of a sudden just comes up with whatever he wants to, and I can't even say anything because it's the final word. So I'm like, oh, I totally disagree with that.
I know, you even ruined it by calling it the final word as opposed to the last word. So you even changed the name.
It's called the final word.
No, it's the last word.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the last word. Whatever it is, it's the final word.
I'm sorry. I'm not. It's just I know you're a person of color. And I know that I'm exercising white privilege against you, and
I know
his color is puce, though.
It's the boss man that's making me do it. I don't. I'm an ally. I really am. Sure.
Brendan looks more ethnic than I do. I think I'm like
just bad lighting.
That happens at a certain time of night.
You guys gotta get out more, and I either have blackout curtains or the sun.
I have jaundice with my lighting. I look like I need to get out in the sun. My skin is yellow.
I'm very red.
Yeah.
I am kind of ruddy, but this accentuates it.
Greg still looks like he's from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, though.
No, I look radiant, I think.
Radiant.
You're beautiful.
Yeah, radiant.
You know what, Greg? I just want you to know you're enough. Okay? You're enough. That's all.
He's good enough. He's smart enough. And gosh darn it, people like him.
That's right.
Look at me. I'm like an Adonis.
That's true.
All right. Well, next week we'll have comedian Keith Ross Nelson on, and then in 2 weeks we'll have Stanley Livingston on, who was the youngest of the Douglas boys on the TV show My Three Sons, which was on television
from. Is this comedian going to be actually funny?
1960 to 1972. What was that, Greg? Would you like to talk over me more?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. I'll try and say something important, and you just talk over me. Go for it.
I didn't know you were going to do 2 weeks.
What are you talking about, Greg?
I thought you were just talking about next week, and then we kept talking. I didn't realize. Sorry.
Sorry. What? I missed something.
I didn't realize that words were coming out of your mouth when I was talking over you. I just didn't realize it.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
I don't know what. Greg, hold on. What? Hello.
And now Brendan's doing it to Greg, as Greg blows smoke into the camera. All right. Well, this has been the Law Offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker. Our client for today was Elves with Lasers.
Your consultation with the Law Offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker has ended. You may pay your retainer at www.qsblaw.org. Please exit to the right of the water cooler and grab a candy from the front desk. We hope to see you again soon, but you need to leave now. I said leave. Why don't they ever listen? Get out! Get out!